Hi, I'm Magda, and this video is inspired by one of my best friend's stories. Because after hours of talking about it, we started to dig deep and we discovered that the reason why she's able to understand English very well, but blocked to speak it, is because of her perfectionism. And I decided to share this story with you because I thought that some of you might resonate with some of those self-sabotaging behaviors that she also does. Okay, so let's talk about it. Let's have a little bit of a mindset talk because mindset is a very important part of the language learning. And I want to make something clear. It's not that I'll be trying to encourage you to not to be ambitious. I want to encourage you to strive for excellence, which is realistic, versus striving for perfection, which is not realistic. And that's something that you need to understand in order to start breaking this perfectionism pattern. Perfectionism often happens on an unconscious level. We tell ourselves stories such as, oh, I will start speaking after I master all of the tenses in English. That's actually the story that my friend was telling herself. And we end up sabotaging a lot of situations where otherwise we would have an opportunity to speak the language, or we even sabotage the job opportunities. So that's a really big deal. And it's our brain that is trying to protect us because it sees progress, advancing, leaving the comfort zone as a potential danger. And yeah, it's just what the brains do. They try to protect us to come back to what is known, what is safe, familiar. But in order to progress, we need to break that pattern. I know it might feel scary to make mistakes, to feel judged, to feel dumb as well, but this is actually the only way to break that comparison, perfectionism, negative talk cycle. And this might be the hardest barrier to break in your all language journey. But when you do, you will set yourself free and you will unlock a new level of yourself in the language, which is truly beautiful. So you need to see mistakes as a part of the process. That's it. It's impossible to make progress when you never try, when you never make mistakes, right? Embrace them and accept yourself making mistakes. It's okay. It's fine. It's safe. You also need to embrace sucking at something initially. We tend to have these expectations that when we start doing something, we need to be immediately good at it. But that never happens. When we start a new hobby, new sport activity, we are usually not good at the beginning of the journey, but somehow about the language, we have those expectations. Usually it takes years to master a language. So it's not a race, it's a marathon. Learning a language is not linear progression. School makes us think that because this is usually how we learn. This is how we learn history in a linear progression. This is how the language schools and examination centers are also trying to make you see the language, that you have to go from point A1 to point C2, right? And there are all of those micro steps on the way. But that's not really how the language works. And we are very often not progressing equally with all our skills, right? We might have more advanced listening skills and less advanced speaking skills. They're never equal. And then the exams test all of them usually on the same level, which is not really how it works in real life. For example, I think I'm very fluent in Spanish, speaking, reading, listening, but I'm not that fluent in writing in Spanish. Okay, because I don't practice. Okay? As simple as that. Don't compare your journey to someone else's journey. You don't know their story, you don't know their background, so it really doesn't make sense. We tend to compare ourselves constantly to everyone else. We tend to compare our looks, our success, progress, and also our language. And we tend to be very judgmental about ourselves. And sometimes we are also very judgmental towards other people. But remember that every time you judge another person and their English, it's going to backfire at you as well. And you'll be also judging yourself in a really harsh way. So just try to be comprehensive, understand that we're not perfect, that we have the right to make mistakes. Other people also have the right to speak English imperfectly, and that's fine. Don't laugh at people's accents. Don't pick at some ways they pronounce a word. Don't feel this need that you need to correct other people, right? Like if you're not their teacher, if they didn't ask you to do so. Sometimes we have this tendency of like, well, but there is a word that you mispronounce, or like, this is not the right tense that you use. Just drop it. Just let it go, right? Like give them a break, and yourself as well. You'll feel way more calm, relaxed when you speak the language, because you will not feel that other people do the same thing to you. Let's talk about expectations versus reality. Perfectionists tend to have very high standards, and when they don't meet them, they might punish themselves with a negative self-talk, which as a result hinders their progress. Of course, the language that will come out of your mouth will not be as perfect as in your head, but that's okay. This all or nothing mentality does more harm than good. And it's a part of the perfectionism mentality. It's hard to tell the critic in your head to shut up, but you can try to rationalize it or try to speak to its mind. When you hear yourself, because all of these are your thoughts, right? This self-critic, it's you. When you hear yourself thinking, oh my God, you embarrassed yourself, or oh, how could you say that? When you start spiraling with this kind of thoughts, try to think like, oh, well, yeah, people understood me. Everybody congratulated me on the presentation. Start to notice those positive things as well, because probably nobody even noticed this mistake that you made, but everybody noticed the radiating confidence, the way you structured your presentation, a lot of other things. Stop being so much in your head, okay? Because other people don't really notice these kind of things that we tend to, in general, notice way too much. And that's also related to the next thing that I'll try to say. Celebrate little milestones, even if they are micro milestones. So sometimes we just tend to celebrate those big things in the language, right? If we pass an exam, right? That's how we see our value very often, like in a numeric form. But celebrate that you gave directions to an American and they understood you and they were grateful, right? That's a real human interaction. Celebrate that you asked confidently a question in a meeting. That might be a grail milestone for you. This might not be a big milestone for someone else, but for you, it might be. So recognize that and say like, yay, I did that. Okay, so high five yourself for doing it. Give yourself a break. That's also the piece of advice that I gave to my friend. We might be caught up in perfectionism for years. It might be holding us back for so long that we just assume that that's the way we are, that's our reality, but it doesn't have to be. The first step to change it is to realize that your issues are rooted in perfectionism. And then the next step is to take your first imperfect action, right? I strongly encourage to take imperfect action. I constantly take imperfect action. By the way, I do not really struggle with perfectionism, so I'm not speaking from my own experience. I'm sharing with you some of the things that my friend told me. But I think one of the best things that you can do is take imperfect action. When was the last time you took an imperfect action? Ask yourself this question. It doesn't have to be an action related to language learning. It could, but it doesn't have to. But sometimes we remove ourselves from some situations because we assume that it's not going to be perfect. Probably you remember, maybe you heard this TikTok that was quite popular. If it's not perfect on the first try, it's trash, I'm trash, and I'm never going to do that again, or something like that, right? Like a person really spiraling, and it's showing how ridiculous it is to expect that something is going to be perfect on the first try, and how we jump to this conclusion that it's trash, I'm trash, right? Like that's a big escalation, right? I'm trash. Thinking about like that, about yourself, it's just horrible. Okay, but that's all that I wanted to share with you today. I hope that it got straight into your heart. Maybe some of those things resonated with you. Maybe you recognized yourself in this video. If you did, feel free to send me a message. Let me know in the comment. I'll be happy to know whether this kind of videos, a little bit different one, not focused so much on the STANAG exam, were also useful for you, because I love talking about mindset and language learning. So I would appreciate some feedback. Obviously, my main content is STANAG, but from time to time, I think I'll be adding this style of a video. So wishing you all the best, and I will see you next time. Bye.